this is 7/6 here, you're getting a loan. I want you to realize that you're signing a note to get money for capital. You need money for capital, so what you're doing is you're borrowing the money. Okay, so when you do that, you create debt, and that debt is in the form of a note. And that note is a payable that you're going to have to put on the books. So I want you to look here, if you would, and see that when we say that a particular note is issued at a discount, what we mean is that you are not going to get the entire amount of the face amount of that note, that you're going to actually receive proceeds that are less than that. Okay, so if you take the discount and the principal amount here and you subtract out the proceeds, you see, you're going to get a $60,000 number. And that number, if you divide it by the principal times time, you get what is referred to as the interest rate, all right, 6%, right? It's referred to as a discount rate. So that means that you're going to receive proceeds of $2,340,000, not $2,400,000, but you're going to owe $2,400,000 at the end of this particular 5 months. Okay. Now, in B, they ask us if we could calculate for us the effective rate. Now, sometimes, guys, you'll see on the radio, you're going to hear on the radio, and they're advertising mortgages, and they'll say the interest rate is 3.9%, but the effective rate is 4.1.7% or something like that. And so if you hear that on the radio, just remember you're actually going to be paying the 4.1 something. You're not going to be paying the 3.9. And let me show you how and why here, because the effective rate is really your real rate, because you use your proceeds that you received to make that calculation. And when you use the proceeds instead of the principal to calculate it, then you get an effective interest rate, or the real interest rate, of 6.2%. So take notice of that kind of language between debtor and dettee is commonly used in business. So be aware of those things. Okay. Now I'm going to come down here to the journal entries associated here, because they ask us if we would go ahead and record these journal entries. So let's look at them real quick. We got on August 1, we're going to get some cash, guys, but notice that we get the proceeds, don't we? And then we're going to record a note payable here for $2,400,000, because that's ultimately what we're going to have to pay. And then the difference, you notice, is put in an account called discount on notes payable here. Discount on notes payable, I want you to realize, is a contra liability account. So this carries a debit balance, but it's a liability account. And what it does is it rides with the notes payable, and it rides on the balance sheet now as notes payable. And then if there's any discount on that notes payable that's on the books, then it would be listed right underneath notes payable as discount on notes payable, and that would decrease notes payable, because notes payable is a credit, discount on notes payable is a debit. Okay, and so the difference between the two would be listed on the balance sheet as your carrying value. So just to make a point, you'll need to know that, because it answers some of those multiple choice questions and stuff. So anyway, on September 30, which is like 1 month later, or is it maybe 2 months later, excuse me, they ask us to do a journal entry for 1 month, right, to record the interest on this particular note. So if you take the face amount of the note times the stated rate, guys, in other words, understand that the note, on the note, the face of the note, right, there was a stated rate of interest, 6%. So we need to take this and book this as an expense at the end of each month. And when we do that, we want to understand that we are amortizing the discount on notes payable at the end of each month. So we are debiting interest expense, we're crediting that discount on notes payable. You notice discount on notes payable is a debit. Well, when we amortize it, we are crediting it. That means we are decreasing it. Okay? So when we get to December 31 and we're going to go ahead and pay this note, right? Then we're going to have this particular journal entry have already been done when the note gets paid. So we'll do this journal entry at the end of each month, one time at the end of August, and then September 30th. And then, of course, October and November and December, we're going to record this same entry. And as we begin to do that, then this $12,000 in over 5 months makes this discount on notes payable zero. So it disappears, right? Goes to zero. And then, of course, we can just pay, right, then the note off. And then we have to debit notes payable here at the end. So I want you to be aware of notes and proceeds and discount rates, because we're also going to discuss in this video 714, which has a very similar slant to it, but a couple of distinct differences. Let's scroll down to 714 in your solutions here. Keeping going. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Right. Now, in this particular case, we're talking about bonds payable and recording the issuance of a bond and the discount on a bond. So just like we can receive money, guys, for capital, for borrowing money, right? We can also sell bonds as well. We can, as a corporation, go and get those bond securities approved by the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, and we can then issue bonds officially on the market. Okay. So when we do that, oftentimes it takes a while. We may have some bonds that we're trying to get approved that have a 6% interest rate, but then whenever the bond gets actually approved and you begin to sell those bonds, then those bonds have not only a value, a present value based on the face amount of the bond, but also a present value that's based on the interest that you will get every year on the bond. So you have both that you're working with. Okay? So when I want you to realize that whenever the market rate is above the stated rate on the bond, then the discount rate is higher, is considered higher, and the higher and higher that it goes, the lower your present value on the cash flow goes. So as the market gets stronger, right, it's going to leave that discount, that stated rate behind, and it's going to be more and more of a discount, if you will. Now, if the market rate drops below the stated rate, then oftentimes our bonds will start selling for a premium instead of a discount. That happens less often, but it does happen. So if you'll see here, the journal entry, I kind of added, guys, these little arrows here and objects, so you kind of remember that. Market rate's higher than stated rate, then the discount rate is higher, then it means that the present value of cash flow then is less. Now, if you look at the journal entry here, we're gonna get cash that is less than the face amount of our bond, because the bond is selling for a discount, on a discount, right? So when we do that, if you'll see, this is very, very similar to a discount on notes payable. We now have a discount on bonds payable. And you'll see that the face amount of the bond is $75 million. Now that's B, okay? But then let's go down here. Look at this. they're asking us to calculate the interest on this bond. So on bonds, unlike notes, you just get proceeds and then you take the discount and you amortize it. But on bonds, you have both interest that you're paying or receiving, depending on which end of the bond market you're on, but you also have a discount, right, that you have to amortize. So you have both. So I want you to look here, see that this 75 million pays a 6% interest rate. And if we take that for just 4 months, because that's what we're dealing with here in this problem, then we get about 1,500,000 in interest alone, right? That is payable, guys. We've got to pay this. Now, we also are going to amortize our discount, excuse me. And we're going to do that by 14,000. So if you add these both together, they're going to be the total amount of interest expense that we're going to have on these bonds. So see, we have to add the interest that we're paying, or that we owe anyway, along with our amortization, and we add them together. If you'll go down here to look at the journal entry, it'll become a lot clearer for you. You see, we are crediting interest payable for 1,500,000. We are crediting discount on bonds payable because we're remember, we are amortizing that bond discount on bonds payable. We're amortizing it here, right? And then what that does is that makes interest expense be higher than interest payable, because you've got this amortization on this bond that you have to amortize, right? So it made your interest expense go up because you sold that bond, remember, issued that bond on a discount. Now, what I want to do is I want to talk about something here that you may run into some questions generally about. And that is, what if the bond didn't sell for a discount, but it sold for a premium? Well, I want y'all to realize that the premium on bonds payable would actually be a liability, just like bonds payable. And it would be listed underneath bonds payable, right? And it would increase bonds payable, its carrying value. So a premium on bonds payable would be a credit here instead of a debit, like the discount was. So a discount would carry a debit balance. A premium on bonds payable would carry a credit balance. So what I want you to realize is that when you get down here and start calculating the interest expense, you would have an amortization of the premium that would be a debit. So that would have actually a decrease in your interest expense. And then your interest payable would be listed. So then interest expense would be less than your interest payable if it was a premium. Right? So I'm just making you aware of how a discount on a bond affects the interest expense that you record, and how a premium on a bond then would affect your interest expense that you would record. So hopefully that's fairly clear for you, as much as I can make it at this point.